All right, everybody. Hello, welcome back. Obviously, this is some breaking news, so I'm just going to try and get this video out as quickly as I possibly can because there's quite a bit to talk about here. So I'm just going to launch straight into it. Team Liquid announced just a few hours ago that they are parting ways with their head coach Jatt. Obviously, this is a pretty big deal, especially following the business with Alphari having been benched in the first week of the LCS and then replacing him with Jenkins. He is being replaced by Kold and Hacks defenders, who I think will do a decent job. But that's not really what I want to talk about right now. I want to talk about sort of the whole thing surrounding Jatt being, more or less released from Team Liquid. The wording of the post and how quickly he has been let go of leads me to believe that he was probably forced to step down rather than a voluntary stepping down. Based on some of the stuff that Thorin has talked about in the video that he released, I think about a week or so ago, talking about the team contention between Jatt and the players, talking about sort of the suddenness of Alphari being benched and how it doesn't really make sense, especially with the way that it was handled by Jatt, and just sort of the community reaction around it. I think also coupled with "I will dominate" statement that he made on Twitter just a couple hours prior to Team Liquid announcing that they were going to release Jatt, I think kind of corroborates that story in that Jatt maybe wasn't willing to go and probably had to be asked to step down, or being given no other option. This is a big deal because this sort of corroborates some of the other stories that have been going around in that benching Alphari was probably not a team decision. It was probably a Jatt decision. And personally, and this is my own theory, one that I think wasn't necessarily supported by the upper, management of Team Liquid, in that I think Jatt may have jumped the gun when he benched Alphari, and not really cleared that with anyone in terms of, communication and saying, hey, are we all on the same page here? And benched him prematurely, which would explain why Team Liquid then was late on a follow-up with their social media post, basically explaining, why Alphari was being benched and so on and so forth. That really is kind of out of order in how you do things. Normally, an org is going to post a social media statement and kind of be hands off, pretty robotic about when they bench players. Maybe much to the consternation of fans, not being able to interact with the people involved in that decision making in terms of, we want to talk to you about why you benched our player. But the majority of the time, the orgs, they just release this press statement, and then that's all you see of how of why a player is getting benched. And I think that's probably one of the better ways to handle it. Is just a more calculated way, a more less personal way of handling it. But Jatt releasing the video that was A, clearly rushed, and B, of very poor quality, and then the fact that the org then had to follow up with a statement afterwards, which was a couple days after the benching of Alphari, leads me to believe that maybe Jatt got ahead of himself as a head coach when he decided to bench Alphari. And I think that this is kind of the result of that. I think it's probable that in the aftermath of Jatt doing that and then them having to release their press statement late, that they were probably hoping to see if Alphari and Jatt maybe could make it work, or maybe if the rest of the team could make it work with Jatt, or whatever is actually going on behind the scenes there. Maybe we hear about that, officially from the team. Maybe we don't. I don't expect that we will, because they haven't been doing the Team Liquid content that they normally do during the regular season about what's going on in the teams behind the scenes, which I think in this specific situation maybe you wouldn't want to see, because that tends to be kind of a dirty laundry scenario where you don't want to air that out in front of an audience. But the fact still remains that it obviously wasn't handled that well, and I think that Jatt's personal way of handling his benching of Alphari probably caused conflict within the team. And I think that ultimately, when it came down to, do you keep Alphari or do you keep Jatt, it was very clear you're going to have to keep Alphari. I have some personal questions that I would like to ask Team Liquid, because their social media statement was a little weird in how they worded and how they worded whether or not Alphari was going to be coming back, which I think they sort of cleared up in the aftermath when they did their press conference just a short while ago, which was very interesting. And if anybody hasn't seen that, I would recommend that you go and look at the VOD from Team Liquid's press statement just a few minutes ago. It was I would say enlightening, but it's more sort of confirmatory of the stuff that we already knew. But my question really is in regards to Alphari's coming back. the way that the post was worded, it made it seem like, after the 27th, the option is on the table for Alphari to come back onto the starting lineup. But as of this moment, they're sticking with Jenkins. Does it make a lot of sense to sort of make the changes you've been making in regards to obviously picking Alphari over Jatt and then not play Alphari in your starting lineup? As of right now, from what they've made it sound like, Alphari will come back to the office come the 27th, and then it'll be a team decision whether or not he joins back. On the whole of it, I would probably say it's pretty an easy decision to make. That, even though Jenkins has been doing his job, and credit where credit's due, he's been doing everything that he needs to do in order to sort of fill the gap that's been left by Alphari in the wake of him being benched. But it's not the same thing. Filling a hole and then going above beyond to produce and be what was arguably a lot of people's MVP pick for the spring split, and debatably the best player in the LCS, both then and right now. Not having him start when you have the chance and have him produce really doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, yes, Jenkins is doing his job, but he's just a temporary fix. He's not Alphari. He's making up for Alphari, but he's not going to have the same kind of capability and production and just effect in the game and on TL's roster, and maybe the morale as well, as Jenkins will. And I think that any discussion that doesn't have the words, yeah, Alphari, you're back on the team come the 27th, it would be ludicrous. I mean, you're paying him a lot of money. You've clearly chosen him over Jatt. You need to play him. And if you don't, I'm sorry, you're kind of trolling. That's really all there is to it. There's no other reason to not play him. And something that Steve was talking about in their press conferences, obviously, our goals, really haven't changed too much. We're still trying to make Worlds, still trying to be competitive, but, it would be ignorant for us to not understand or not, admit that we're working through stuff. I think that even in the wake of you still working stuff, you should still be bringing Alphari in, even if, some of that working stuff, maybe was toxicity on Alphari's part to the team, or maybe it was just a conflict between Jatt and Alphari. I mean, it's impossible to know at this point. It's very difficult to say what it's actually going to end up being at the end of the day. But even despite the stuff that they're working through, any discussion that doesn't have Alphari coming back into the roster, to me, just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't know why you wouldn't play him after all of this stuff that's happened, both with removing Jatt and then obviously there's the thing with Santorin being benched too, which is a lot of people say obviously the statement from TL and from Santorin himself is that he's undergoing health issues, which I understand. But if you were going to bench a player either for performance or to make a change, even if health reasons is one of the primary reasons that you're benching him, you would do it now. To put it lightly, if shit's going to hit the fan, it might as well hit it all at the same time. I think Armao coming in for Santorin is going to be interesting. I am not going to offer an opinion on how I think Armao is going to do, other than his spring split performance was admirable, was pretty good, especially considering how he performed up to in the finals. For LCS, I think it was good. So I wish him the best of luck, and I hope that him coming in to take over for Santorin, especially early on before the start of the second split, is going to be important, because he's going to get playtime with the team, and it does seem like Santorin is going to be out for the foreseeable future, probably the entirety of the summer split, if I had to guess, and more than likely Worlds at that point, because they'll be so used to Armao, who I hope is an improvement over Santorin. And that's not a knock on Santorin, but if you're going to make the change and you're going to bench somebody, you need whoever's coming in to be a meaningful difference positively over the person you just benched. And Armao needs to show that he can do that, not just for a couple of weeks, but for the entirety of the summer split. So I wish him the best of luck, and I hope he hits the ground running and that he's able to be successful, because obviously the Santorin has had some criticisms, maybe fairly or unfairly levied his way about his performance during the summer split so far. And like it or not, the jungle role for Team Liquid right now is an exploitable weakness. There's obviously a performance difference between them and a lot of the other top level teams in the LCS right now. So I think bringing in Armao is probably a good decision. I think regardless of what the actual reason for bringing him in, whether or not Santorin is actually having a health issue, which I believe, if he's having problems with his head and stuff like that, obviously needs to get that worked out. But the timing is also not suspect, but it's really good to make the change if you're going to do it, because if you're trying to make the change, 4 or 5 weeks from now, it's not going to be as good as just ripping the Band-Aid off right now while you're making coaching changes, while you're potentially bringing your star top laner back in, and while you're saying, hey, what's one way we can sort of start to shore up our weaknesses all in one go? Jungle role. Okay, well, let's bring in Armao, who's a pretty good jungler in and of its own right. Is he better than Santorin? I don't know. We'll see. So that's why I'm reserving judgment on Armao for now, until he's had a couple of weeks to start gelling with the team again. He's had some games under his belt, more than just the ones in spring, because there's been some sizable time between when he played in spring versus when he's playing now. And I hope that that the change works out for better for TL. Really, other than that, that's kind of just the biggest news right now regarding TL. Obviously, just the big, not really shock factor around Jatt parting ways with TL. I think, again, given the way that the social media post was worded, I think the quickness in which this all happened more or less suggests that Jatt was sort of forced out. And I think that definitely gives more credence to the theory that Thorin had. Well, not theory, because more of what he's talked about is from what he said is corroborated by sources that he has both within the org and other people that he's talked to, that Jatt was sort of the point of conflict within the team, that he obviously wasn't gelling well with the players or with the staff. And I think that a lot of the stuff that's happened today corroborates his story and the stuff that he said on his video. So anyways, I'm rambling at this point. I just wanted to get this video out. It's going to be big news. There's going to be a lot of talk about it. Hats off to Team Liquid for making a change. Personally, I think that if you had to pick between Jatt and Alphari, you obviously pick Alphari. You pay him a tremendous amount of money. He's obviously proved that he's a top level player, that he'll produce for your team. And if there was a conflict between him and the coach, personally, I think the coach had to go, which is difficult, especially given the landscape of the LCS right now, where coaches are just assigned to teams that they have really no say in building, which is also very rough. And that probably should change, and that coaches and teams should be built from the ground up with each other. But it's not always the case, especially because there aren't as many players per teams in League of Legends than a traditional sport like basketball, baseball, whatever. So there's less stuff to be involved with in the terms of number of people. But still, I think that maybe that contributed some. But regardless, in this situation, if you had to pick between a player and a coach, I'm glad that they picked the player. I wish Hacks Defender and Kold the very best of luck in taking over this. This is obviously one hell of a way to find yourself the head coach of an org, and I hope that they will hit the ground running, spread their wings, and show that they have what it takes to sort of fill in for Jatt, if not be better, which personally I think that they probably can do. Best of luck to Jenkins and Alphari, however that situation plays out. Personally, I hope to see Alphari back on the roster. But Jenkins is showing that he's a producer. He's doing everything he can. He's been pretty good while Alphari's been away. And I think that he is deserving of a fair shot. And if it comes down to, whether or not the team is synergizing better with Jenkins or Alphari, maybe there's an argument to keep Jenkins. I would be supportive of that. But personally, I would like to see Alphari back in that role. And then best of luck to Armao. Bud, you're coming in at a rough time. It's almost literally a queen sweep of a bunch of stuff in TL. So hit the ground running and prove that you deserve a spot, man. Because it's going to be a rough couple of weeks for you. So welcome to hell. And beyond that, that's really all I've got. So I'm gonna just sign off, guys. See you later.